Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hello and welcome to this special bonus episode of MBOM. I'm Amanda and I'll be your host for this and all episodes of the podcast. I am very excited to have PunchPass sponsoring this episode of the show. PunchPass is a booking software that lets you effortlessly manage your customers, the passes they purchase, and the classes they attend. It's the simplest, most flexible tool you'll find, and you get exactly what you need without the headache. They offer 3 plans so you don't have to pay for features you don't use, and on top of that, they have top-notch customer service. Go ahead and give their free trial a try to see for yourself. Head on over to punchpass.com/MBOM and start your free trial today. All right, on to today's episode of the podcast. Today's episode is a little bit different. I'm talking with Meghan Vornholt. Meghan actually lives in the town that I grew up in, Cochrane, Alberta. It's a small town outside of Calgary, Alberta. And it was kind of cool because she didn't live there when I lived there as a teenager and that sort of thing. She moved there after I had moved away and somehow found my podcast on the internet and started listening, reached out to see if we could work together in a coaching perspective. And, we had a call, we connected, and we kind of went from there. And Meghan and I worked together consistently, pretty much having calls weekly or bi-weekly for about 6 months. And it was pretty cool to see Meghan's business grow throughout that 6 months. She has been teaching yoga for a long time, but was ready to step it up and take it to the next level. So we started with a website and building a social media presence, getting a newsletter going, and working on really building out her niche and figuring out, if studio classes aren't bringing in the people that you want to work with, how can you shift that? Meghan has gone through so much transition and personal growth, and about 6 months after her and I stopped regularly working together, we got on a call and just caught up. So this is a bonus sort of consultation call episode. But it's also a little bit different from my regular consultation calls because, as you'll hear in this episode, Meghan didn't really need my coaching at this point. She has done so much of her own personal work and she's grown so much in her own business that it really feels more like a conversation. But despite that, I still really wanted to share this conversation because I feel like there's so much benefit that can be had out of these types of conversations, talking about the things that we're struggling within our business with somebody who can listen and support and understand. And it also gives you a feel for the type of work that I do outside of the podcast. So I hope that you guys enjoy this conversation with Meghan. And without further ado, here she is. Meghan, it's so exciting to have you here. We've worked together over the last, when did we first start working together? About a year ago, worked together for about 6 months consistently. And then you've been crazy busy over the last little bit. So I'm excited to be catching up with you today. And for listeners who don't know you as well as I do, can you tell me a bit about your business?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so great to connect with you again too, Amanda. And you've been really helpful in helping me start a lot of things this year. So thank you for that. So my business is, I'm based out of Cochrane, Alberta, which is just outside of Calgary. So I do work kind of in both the city of Calgary and Cochrane. And I've been teaching yoga to public classes since 2013. I did my first yoga class in 2003, and then I started training in 2010 and kind of just continued to learn from there. And mostly, I teach a variety of yoga classes. Kundalini is a type of yoga that not a lot of people know about, and it's not as widely practiced here, but it is one that I'm really passionate about because it's been a big part of my journey. So I teach Kundalini yoga. I also teach Hatha yoga and restorative yoga. And I live on an acreage just outside of Cochrane, and in the work that I'm doing, I'm incorporating our horses into some equine facilitated learning programs with some of the yoga breathing and grounding and that kind of work. So
yeah, that's all amazing. Yeah. How's your equine therapy stuff going? Because that's something I think was like a big goal that you had, a year ago, and that now you're actually like, that's a reality for you.
Yeah. So in the summer, I finished up all my practicum hours between volunteering with the woman I'm mentoring with, and then doing some sessions out here with our herd of horses for people. So I got all my hours in and learned a lot in the process. And I also went on my own personal growth, like personal development. I went on a retreat that specialized in equine facilitated wellness. And so this summer I've incorporated a workshop every month starting in May. So it'll be like psychoeducational and experiential with horses and some yoga techniques in there to explore different topics. So I'll do one a month from May till October.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm so excited for that. Have you started promoting them at all, or is it kind of still in the creation phase?
I did. So I put them in one of the things that I've embraced and that you've really helped me tweak is the a monthly newsletter to people who choose to be a part of it. So I started the monthly newsletter. After I do workshops, I just leave an email sign up kind of sheet that people could sign up. And then as you helped me get online, I added it to my website. And so I think I have about 70 people on my email list, something like that. And so far that's mostly what it's gone out to. It's just my email list.
No, that's amazing. And so I feel like email lists are the type of thing that I'm definitely pro email list, as you know, but lots of people do kind of give that pushback about do I actually need an email list? Do you feel like it's been beneficial for you?
I feel it has because even if people aren't necessarily signing up for workshops, you and I have talked about it, people need to hear from you a certain amount of times before they might be called to work with you more. Mm-hmm. And the people that want to be on my newsletter, I have a really good opening rate, the percentage is really good. So people who have chosen to be on there actually open it, which is great. And then the people who connect with me, a lot of them are my yoga students that I see on a weekly or perhaps a little more sporadic basis. They'll comment on things like, wow, I really love your newsletter. There's so much value in it. And so to me, even if the profit margin isn't quite there yet, it is still valuable because it's a way that I can connect with people and I can add value to their daily lives. So yeah, I think it's been valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing that I love that you do too is that you send it out on the first, every single month. It's something that I'm really not good at. It's kind of it's the first week-ish of the month, I'll get it out. And yours comes on the first every single month, which is really awesome that you built that habit.
Consistency. I'm not consistent with everything, but something about my personality, my brain is okay, the first is.
Definitely. So, yeah. No, mm-hmm. I totally get that. That's amazing. And so what are some of your big goals that you have, I guess, more specifically, over the next year? Where do you really want to see your business kind of go in the next year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the next year, I'd really like my goal is to have the workshop offerings that I do. I'm working at one workshop a month, maybe two. Obviously in the winter, it's more yoga aligned because we can go inside and it's cold here in Canada. And then in the summer, more of the equine workshops. So my goal is to have those full and being profitable. So I've looked at I like to work at for my equine workshops full as 8 because I only have a certain amount of horses and I want to keep it a small group. But for the yoga, in the yoga studios, I would like them to be at 12 or more. To me, then that's full. Mm-hmm. So I would like to figure out, my goal is to figure out the marketing component and also then that I've touched enough people and added enough value and been consistent enough that those are full without being overwhelming on my time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so in terms of like the workshops that you've done over the last like 6 months to a year, have you gotten those numbers that you wanted?
Last year I didn't. The year before was like a really good year, and I know you and I have talked about it, of trying to figure out what that piece is. Is it something within me that I'm holding back? Is it, we have had quite a downturn in the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is it the word of mouth? Like I'm not reaching people in the mediums that I'm using. So last year was kind of a year that made me sit back and go, okay, what can I do differently? How can I do this differently? Because I wasn't getting a lot of people to the workshops, whether I was doing them alone or even when I was collaborating with other people. It just didn't seem to draw the the people weren't drawn, or they didn't hear about it. I'm not sure what the piece was, but that's really something that I want to work on. And I know there's always going to be elements of the unknown and things out of our control, obviously. But if I can build um, a community of people that find value in what I do, and price it well and market it well, I think that the goal of having those workshops is very realistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that you're striving for realistic numbers, and I think that there's definitely like the market in the area. It's about like finding those people, right? It's like, where
Mm-hmm.
are those people that are passionate about the same things that you're passionate about? And I think that when it comes to marketing, that's one of the hardest parts. It's like we can stick up Facebook ads, we can kind of like, put our feelers out there, but it's like you actually have to find those people. So I guess I'm curious in terms of, marketing, what is some of the marketing stuff that you've been doing over the last little bit with your business?
Yeah, awesome question. So, I mean, you've helped me a lot with like my online presence. So, like, I didn't even have a website until last year. And part of it was because it seemed so daunting, and you just like kind of guided me through the WordPress, and like, yeah, I was like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, you
Uh,
crushed it.
and then my email list once a month. I've also been a lot more intentional with my Facebook page. So I got a logo done this year as part of my whole like online presence. And so I've been just like, I rebranded a little bit, both the title of my Facebook page and like put my like logo on there, which is beautiful. I just love what this lady did. It's like a horse and a person with hands at their heart and namaste, and it just really incorporates both of what I do. And so I've been really more intentional about posting to my Facebook page, probably, I don't know, probably 3 times a week, which is kind of unheard of from before. Like I used to just, if I had something going on, I'd post it. But like posting different articles about breath, or I figured out how to link my email newsletter so it gets posted on my Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anything that comes up about yoga or equine facilitated wellness and equine therapy, like any kind of, to give people an insight about, what I'm doing and what the benefits are. And if people want to read the articles or look at the pictures, and great. And yeah, so I've been a little more intentional with my Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
And I do the traditional posters as well. So I put them up at a few local coffee shops. And then I also take a poster with me to the yoga classes that I teach at weekly. So any of the kind of upcoming events. So I have a 1-day retreat in April, and then I'm doing a collaboration with a local woman who plays the sound bowls. So I'm going to teach a yoga class, and she's going to play the sound bowls while we're in Shavasana. So I'll post the posters wherever I am teaching. And then I've created these like affirmation cards. So they have affirmations like "you are enough," or just like "you are light," or whatever it is, like on the back. And then on the other side is a little, almost like a little mini full flyer about the info for my retreat in April.
Oh, cool.
So that's something kind of new that I've done so that people are still getting value because there's like a little affirmation or positive quote on one side, but then they're taking it away with them. And then there's the information that has my website and the retreat on it on the other side.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Do you feel like since posting more on more consistently on Facebook, have you noticed more engagement?
I would say on my Facebook page. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I guess I was curious because it's one of those things that people tell you, right? It's like social media 101. It's like if you want to have people see your stuff and you want to play by Facebook and Instagram's algorithms, you need to post consistently. But it's that type of thing that I feel like is actually hard to track unless we're actually doing data analysis.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you're doing posters. I think that posters are something that's a community by community basis thing. But I think in sort of the Alberta community, especially in the smaller places where I work out of in Canmore, Cochrane, it's people really are in those coffee shops. And that's how they do often hear about those things. It's something that we do at the studio that I work at in Canmore too. And I think it's hard because you can't directly track it. It's not somebody's most people aren't hey, I saw this poster at X location and that's why I'm here. But I do think that it does kind of it's one of those touch points for people.
Yeah, definitely. And even in the first retreat I ever did, which was sold out, I think we had 17 people at the day-long retreat. And I think 2 or 3 people said, I saw your poster at the coffee shop. And I called my girlfriend and said, hey, we should do this day retreat together. And that's how 2 of them ended up there. So
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. I love that. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, so you've got these, these goals with these workshops, filling out these programs. Marketing is something that you've been working on consistently, but something that you still want to improve to get the numbers. What do you think is kind of what do you need to do in the next couple of months to kind of get from where you are now to actually, May starts and it's workshops are booked out?
Well, I know internally for me, I get really excited and I'm better at talking about what I do when I've done the back end stuff of creating. Mm-hmm. So sitting down and really looking at, okay, what's the May workshop with the horses going to look like? I don't script with the horses every single moment because it's not organic that way. But if I can think of what the flow of the day is going to be and what I hope people will get out of it and create a framework for that, then I can get really excited about telling people about it. Mm-hmm. Same with the April one. So really, I need to sit down and work on the vision, I guess, of what that day is going to look like. So I can be really excited about sharing it and creating interest that way. And I think being consistent, I feel it's hard for me to be proud of myself, but then in this case, it is, I can see my progress that I've made. I can see my progress of, I didn't like talking about myself. I didn't like this whole, I found your podcast because I was oh, the business of yoga, gross.
That's
but because I realized that it is a business and it is a spiritual practice for me. And it is a service that I can offer people. And it doesn't have to be yucky, and it doesn't have to be this energetic that is just feels gross like I had before. Mm-hmm. But I also don't want to do it just for fun and pro bono all the time, because it's still my time and my energy, and it's still, I put thousands of dollars worth into my own training. So I do want it to see it move in that direction of being a lifestyle for me, and ultimately, what I do without a full-time day job. So I do need to I need to continue the consistency that I've worked hard to build this year. And like you said, I'm pretty consistent at for some reason, the beginning of my month triggers do your newsletter. And I've put the back end work to figure out MailChimp and figure out a template. So it really doesn't take that long anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I think, a matter of being consistent, doing the back end visioning. And I'm totally open to any suggestions you have to help that along. But that's what I can see right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that. It's like, I think one of the things when we are kind of doing like all the front end work, like, you know, you're doing the posters, you're doing the marketing, you're doing the email consistently, you're talking about it. It is kind of like that back end thing where it's like, there is a difference. The way we present something is like, hey, you know, I'm doing this thing. Like it'd be cool if you came, versus like, hey, like I've created something that's going to be like the best day ever. And you've got that vision, right? Like it's so clear in your mind that you could make somebody feel excited to come along with it. I remember the first time I went to do yoga retreat, that was one of the things I was trying to do. Like there was definitely like my brain was working against me with like doubts about timing and money and, you know, where are these people going to come from and stuff. And I felt like that was like blocking my vision a lot. Like it's like I'd go to like envision it, like sit down to meditate, and then it was just like this total blockage of like my brain going crazy, which I think is really normal. Like do you get that as well? It's kind of like the rational
absolutely.
versus like, no, I can do this type thing. And yeah, I didn't end up doing that retreat because we didn't sell enough in time. And I think there's like good, like learning things that came from that for me personally. But I think there was also like this part of me that like never really believed in myself enough to actually like, you know, you sit down with somebody like yourself and be like, hey, I'm doing this really badass thing. Like, do you want to come? Type thing. And I think that's a lot of the work when it comes to sort of like the marketing and the business. And I think that sort of connects with like that spiritual side of it too. Like what's our relationship with believing that we deserve to get paid for that?
Yeah, exactly. And like the business of yoga is new. Like it's a market economy thing. Like people, I mean, as far as I know, if you went back and you were able to practice yoga, like you had to find, you know, you had to find somebody who would teach you, and you had to be really dedicated. And there wasn't like, they might have been in different places for the like royalty, or they might have been in a cave, but there wasn't like a business of yoga before. So like this is a new like paradigm almost. It's a new structure completely.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And like you said, I think I block myself a lot. So limiting beliefs are always something that I continue to surface and look at and do my best to reprogram. Yeah. And that's, I think, just constantly evolving. So.
Yeah. What are some of your like regular practices in terms of kind of getting over those limiting beliefs?
Well, for awareness is super key for sure. And that, so journaling, I had a gratitude journal that I've done for like a decade, and I changed it up a little bit recently. I don't know if you've heard of the Artist Way.
Yeah, I have heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So a group of women and I are doing they're called creative clusters. And it's like a group that works with the book and the morning pages that Julia Cameron, the author, suggests. So it's writing first thing in the morning when you've had no other input. And so it's like a subconscious brain dump, basically. And so I've changed that a little bit. And wow, like you sure find out what your blocks are and what you think about yourself when you let yourself write unedited first thing in the morning. And she talks a lot about like all the, like not censoring it and just letting it be whiny and letting it be complainy and just starting to watch what your thought patterns are then. And it has been really eye-opening of what those thought patterns are for sure. And then I've started to infuse gratitude into it. So I kind of let my, inner critic or my, kind of temper tantrum 3-year-old get it out there, but I also like infuse gratitude into it consciously. So it's been a really good practice. And then of course, like meditation and yoga to get into a meditative space. I find even if it's just a little bit of movement. So a lot of times, so I do have a day job. So what I find is sustainable for me is do some spinal openings through like the Kundalini yoga practice. So just some like spinal flexes, twists, shoulders, head. And then it kind of just gets the energy moving up your spine. It gets a little bit of breath and movement into your body. And then a meditation, whatever that is. Maybe it's just breathing. Maybe it's mantra. Maybe it's something else, but that's like been a really sustainable way for me to practice because it doesn't have to take very long. I have it memorized. It's not like I have to think about it. I just do it.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. What was it like kind of starting a practice of just letting yourself journal like uninhibitedly about things that were bothering you? Because I feel like, we're just so programmed. Like even when we sit down to journal, it's like, today was okay. And then you're like, there's like people starving in the world. Like, was my day really that bad? Like, it's so easy to kind of get in these like rational loops of like, or these loops of like rationalization where you're like, my life's not that bad. And I think it's like, it's so therapeutic to be like, today sucked and just like write about that. But it's hard because I think we're so programmed to not do things like that.
Yeah. And I think that so even within our group, everyone has had a different experience with embracing the morning pages and allowing them to let it out. For me, it was like I think because I journaled so much before, it was like a really smooth transition. It did take a little bit to allow that voice to come through. Cause like you say, we edit it and we kind of judge our own challenges and we belittle ourselves by saying, oh, well, but that's a first world problem, but it's still something that is something within you. It's causing emotion or it's causing struggle. And so when we continue to compare our struggle with somebody else's struggle, then we're not actually, living our best life, when we're not living within the yamas and niyamas of compassion and kindness, because we're judging ourselves by feeling this way or thinking this way. And so there's definitely a healthy balance. I think if all you did was journal and complain, it would not be very good.
Right.
But there's something also about what I noticed is when I allowed myself to be real about what was bothering me, often the answers came throughout the day. Like, because I did it in the morning, I had kind of some awareness of what was going on below the surface. And then as the day progressed, it's like I could take in signs or awarenesses better because I knew what I was looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes setting the intention the night before of, allowing my morning practices to show me what I need to see. Then the morning pages will kind of flush that out. And then throughout the day, it will continue to become clearer.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's definitely harder for some people. One person in our group up until I think a week ago was still like, man, I just struggle with those pages. I don't want to do them. I don't know what to write. But like you said, we've been conditioned to, positive psychology and positive thinking is great. But then if we don't actually embrace our struggles too, we're losing a huge, big part of ourselves.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like we have to have that acceptance of everything that comes up, even if it's like, maybe if somebody read it, they're like, that's like the pettiest, dumbest thing. Like it doesn't matter. It's still true for you. Right. And that's why like journaling is amazing because it's such a safe place. Like nobody goes into our journals, right? Like that's that place where you can just really like let everything out in a really honest way. But yeah, I think that that's a great practice. And it sounds like it's definitely been really positive for you, which is super awesome. That group also sounds really great. It sounds like kind of like the idea of a mastermind, but something that's like a little bit more like, I guess like masterminds for personal development too, but maybe like more personal development and spirituality, which is really awesome.
Yeah. I would definitely recommend all you need is to buy the book. It's less than $20 and find a group of, 3 to, I think we have 8 in our group, whatever group size feels good for you. And then it's a weekly, for us, it's all women. It's like a weekly women's circle. It adds connection, which is such a big part of being a human, is to have connection. Mm-hmm. It allows you a place to be real. And yeah, and we have some good laughs. Like it's not all like serious. Like we laugh, and that's also really good for the human experience. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I'm in an accountability group with 4 other people, and we meet pretty weekly as well. And I've been doing it for probably like close to a year now. And it's been like a really positive experience just to have, people who like know what's kind of going on in my life, from like goals to things that are like, okay, habits I'm trying to build, habits I'm trying to break. And it's nice to have somebody each week that's like, hey, did you stick to your sleep schedule? And you're like, no, but they're like, okay, they're not like, oh, you suck. It's like, oh, how can like we support you for next week to actually get on this, which is really awesome.
Awesome.
You heard me talk about PunchPass at the beginning of this episode, and I am so excited to be partnered with them. Before we continue with the episode, I wanted to tell you a couple more things about the software. So with PunchPass, they have really done their best to make sure that you can focus on the business that you enjoy and let them take the hassle off your hands. And they've done so in a way that we can afford as businesses. One of the things that I love the most about PunchPass is that they're a small business, just like you and just like me. And so they're made for us. They're not a big company that's just charging us a lot of money for the services. They understand that we're small businesses as yoga teachers, and they really want us to be able to do what we love, which is teach yoga. So if you've been looking for some sort of software that can make your yoga business a lot more simple, head on over to punchpass.com/MBOM to start your free trial today. All right, back to the episode. So something you said earlier is something I'd love to touch on. You're talking about kind of like the business side of yoga feeling kind of, icky when you came to it, which I think is really, really common for yoga teachers. Like you said, it's a really sort of new thing of like, oh, this is like a quote unquote industry and there's a business. But I think there definitely is this aspect of like, okay, we come to it because we're passionate and we have this, for most of us, like a personally profound experience, which is why we want to become teachers and share it. And then we start doing it and it feels amazing to just share it. Like you're like, I don't really need any like compensation. But then if you want to do it full time, the reality of living in like 2019 is that we need to pay for the roof over our head and food, and insurance, phone bill, all that stuff, like to live. And then I think that's where sort of like resentment builds up really easily, because then it's like, oh, well, I'm spending all this time doing this thing and I'm not making enough money and I have to have another job. And now I'm tired and now I don't have time for my own practice. And it's like this spiral that I think, a lot of us have experienced. I'm curious, have you kind of gone through like the side of looking at like your relationship with money and like your money story and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I have. You and I have talked about that too, and like the you are
hey yogis, I just wanted to take a quick little break to talk a little bit more about PunchPass.
And I heard too about, I haven't done this practice yet, but I think I was listening to another podcast about like writing a love letter to money.
Oh yeah.
And, I have, I think my block is actually the worthiness piece, not actually a money piece. When I've delved into it a little deeper, I quit my job, full-time job in 2012. It was just one of those jobs that was like, it was sucking the life out of me. And I would actually use that word. Like I would be like, I feel like, I have nothing left. I feel like it's sucking the life out of me. And so like, there was like some pretty big red flags. And spiritually, I put it out there like, okay, well, I hear I can't ignore this. Like it's going to be bad for my health if I continue. But I'm just putting it out there. Like I still need to pay my bills. And I told the universe, like, here's the number you got to hit. I don't care how you hit it. Like I'm open to whatever. I'll work at Starbucks if you want me to. But I need those opportunities to come so I can still live. I still need to pay my mortgage. I still need to pay, like you said, phone bill, gas bill, all that kind of stuff. And it's always happened. It's always been provided for me. And so I think for me, linking my spirituality and allowing the universe to support and me to receive the opportunities that come, because most of them I could never have fathomed. I couldn't have set a goal and said, okay, well, I'm going to be teaching at this place, because I didn't even know that place existed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I just had to like say, okay, this is the number. So now what I've been working on with like my money is expanding that number. Okay, I've been taken care of without, this full-time. So I was a school teacher before.
Mm-hmm.
So without being a full-time school teacher, it's always worked out. And without it being, my work hasn't felt like that soul sucking like it did before. So now what I'm working on is expanding the number and putting it out there the same way, I guess. But what I've noticed that comes up is, like I said, my block is worthiness. Like, what makes you think that you're worth this? Like, what makes you so good, right? What makes you so valuable that people would pay money and you could do this? And so for me, it's like, it's not so much that I'm blocked to money, because I think I am really good with like a budget and I can put it out there and figure it out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But allowing myself to dream a little bit bigger and not just get by, like I actually want to start working on those dreams that are on my dream board and the lifestyle that I've dreamt of, not just settling for what is, I guess.
Yeah. So when you set that initial number, when you quit your full-time job, it was like, did you set something that was more like, okay, this will like get me by type thing? Like I can live off of this?
Yes. It was like, well, this is what my like net expenses plus savings would be. So I need to keep making that, basically.
Right. So it's kind of like, what makes you deserving of making more?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I feel like that's not uncommon, because it is kind of like, it's like when somebody asks us, like, how much is your workshop or how much is a private session? And then you feel like you need, if so say you say $100 for a private, which, is not totally unreasonable, but it's definitely like probably on the higher end for somebody charging privates in Alberta. It's like you immediately want to justify yourself, right? Like you want to be like, but you'll get this and this and this. Like, this is why it's worth it. But, how can we get to a point where we feel so confident in our offerings where we just say, that's how much I charge?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like with the business of yoga, it's like like I've done some private work too. And I always feel like I have to do more for them to feel comfortable paying for it. Like have to have some sort of fancy like take home plan, either on computer or written out, or, and I think embracing but you're enough, your presence with them and imparting what you have learned and inviting them to step into what they need, that is it. Mm-hmm. You don't need any other fancy document or video or anything like that. And so I think that's what I'm looking at, is that, because I think with marketing, often we see like value add marketing. You get all this, da 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 da.
Right. It's worth $10,000, but I'm going to give it to you for $4,000.
Yeah, and then what you're getting from it, and is the presence of me as a yoga teacher and the connection to that person, is that actually the value? Mm-hmm. Not all the whatever extra ads that we think we need to have. Right. So that's kind of what I'm looking at of that, like, essentially when we're yoga teachers, we are the product, we are the service. Mm-hmm. And that is a blessing, and also it can be really challenging, because I have found it hard to not take things personally. Then it's harder not to take things personally. But I also know that kind of that saying of when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to be the teacher for everybody, and not every student is ready either. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think that's been some of the unraveling that I've been looking at with like the abundance and the money and yeah, there's also been some big things that the universe has called me to shift. So I'm
Yeah.
working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're always a work in progress, right? And it's really cool to hear like how much I feel like there's been like a lot of growth just since we had like our last call, which was probably about like 6 months ago, maybe a little more than that. I can tell you've done like a lot of personal work and personal development, which is really, really great. I'm curious with regards to like the worth stuff and wanting to make more money. You know, when you think about, so it's, I think you do a lot of meditation. So like if you sit down and meditate on like, you know, say it's like you want to make 6,000 a month, I'm just throwing out a random number. If that's like the number you're going at, you know, what's like the inner dialogue in your head? Like, is it like, but you only need like 4,000 to live? Or like, what's kind of that inner dialogue when you kind of put it out there? Like, hey, universe, like I'd like to make 6,000 next month.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think I said some of the things, but sometimes my mind starts focusing on solution seeking, like, okay, but how? How is that possible? And if I go back to a lot of manifestation work is that you've got to set the what and let the universe kind of allow its own how almost to unfold. And when also, you have to be unattached to the when, which is kind of counterintuitive to our, I guess, more mind-driven goal-setting practices that says, and it's not saying that you can't put a date on things. It's just that you have to be flexible with that date.
Totally.
Because, you know, if you completely get destroyed because next year you're not a full-time yoga teacher and you quit completely, then you've completely lost, you know, then you can never get there then if you quit completely. So, so a lot of it is my mind starts trying to solution seek, well, how and when, and then is that even possible? And like goes back to the, why do you think you're worth that much money? And, you know, people are hurting right now. The economy's bad. How would people ever pay that much money? And it's not like it's one person paying my entire monthly like wage, but it's just like those are what my brain thinks. And then my brain will say, oh, well, you might be able to do that with a partner, but you could never make that much money by yourself. You know, like, yeah, it just continues. And is that what you were asking? Like those kind of thought patterns?
Yeah. Just where your mind goes. And I think, you know, we've talked about this before, but I think you and I are both very like rational type people. So I definitely relate to the like if I'm meditating on something like that, I'm like, hey, universe, like give me this amount of money. My brain's like, but how are you going to do that? Which I think is like a good thing to have kind of that practicality. You know, obviously like there's like a good and a like maybe like a negative with every trait that we have. But I think the fact that your brain does go to like actually thinking about how to do that is like can be a really positive thing, because I think for us to sit in like a meditation and just be like, hey, I want this amount of money without like any type of thought around like how we're actually going to take action on it is probably also not realistic. Like we need to have that balance of like belief in ourselves and action taking.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's kind of like, you know, it's figuring out that like, okay, how can I do that? But then also kind of weaning in that like, I deserve to make this much money, which I think is really, really hard to say. Because then it's like, well, who am I to make this money?
Yeah. And sometimes it's about like deserving the lifestyle. For some people, a number might feel too scary to imagine or unfathomable or whatever. So maybe it's the lifestyle. And trusting that the universe knows how much money it needs to bring to you for that vision to come about. So it's creating one of the techniques that I've learned is it's through like some brain reprogramming and meditation. And I think we talk a lot. I mean, I did a little bit in my first yoga training too, but it's visualizing your perfect day. Maybe writing it out and like all the little aspects of what that day would be. Who's there? What are they saying? What are they saying about you? What are you doing? Like, how does it feel? And it's like you create that movie in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's like a way of like programming the brain to say, okay, this is what I want it to look like and feel like. And most likely it's not going to look exactly like that. But when you start to manifest even small portions of it, you're like, oh, this is what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I remember visualizing that. And even if it's like just like a small symbol that you saw on a door or a painting or something, you're like, oh, and so for me, that's what I look to. And you're right. You can't just sit around and meditate and visualize all day. There's an actionable step that needs to happen, but it's an attachment to how it happens and when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I still have to get out of my house and do the work internally and externally.
Mm-hmm.
With this trust that it's going to happen at some point, at some time.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. How do you balance kind of like, so you have this trust that it's going to happen, but then there's also this sort of like, I think in the back of our heads, we're like, okay, is it going to like happen soon? And I think it gets harder, like the longer we do it, right? Like you're like, okay, I've been doing this for like a year. Like, are the clients going to come? I know for me, it's like, are the podcast listeners going to come? Are the clients going to come in? There's this sort of like, it's hard not to have our mind sort of like this twinge of like, is this going to actually work? Because there's the balance of like trusting that if you keep putting the work in, it will happen versus like, seeing it actually happen. Have you, I guess, like experienced that? And then how do you also kind of like, keep trusting?
Well, I think that's kind of like a daily choice. It's like showering, like it's like it still takes work and it's like part of the practice and like self-doubt. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure the last time we talked, like there was massive amounts of self-doubt. I was changing jobs and I'd had that rough year of just feeling like nobody wanted to come to my workshops. And I had a lot of doubt. I was like, okay, well, I had to refocus on why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, connecting deeper into my why and my intention, because I definitely was at a point where I could have just like, why am I doing this? Why don't I just quit? I don't need a full-time job and a side hustle, right? Like I don't. So why am I doing this? So for me, it was like connecting in deeper to my why. And also doing like a lot of the personal growth stuff to see what I needed to shift in my life. And there's still a pretty big aspect in my life that I haven't shifted yet. But if you like a lot of the kind of, if you look at laws of the universe or even like the art of tidying up, like you have to, there's only a certain amount of kind of energy and capacity that we have as people and also that the universe can give us. So if we keep putting all our energy into something that isn't really working for us, we don't have the energy to work on something that is. So there are some letting goes and some closing of doors that have to happen so that you can move forward into the doors that are waiting for you. They're unlocked. But your mind is your focus is so over going through this door that you don't even notice this one.
Right.
So I think part of my practice has been looking at the things that might be taking me off of my path and taking away from my capacity and taking away from my vision. And like I've been on totally a tidying up kick right now, like just like from closets to my office to cleaning out our shed. And like, it's just been, there's something really therapeutic that when you can physically, tangibly see what cleaned up, organized, peaceful looks like on the outside, it starts to kind of transition for me what the chaos on the inside is and how I can kind of clean that up in a way too.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Have you watched Marie Kondo's like the Netflix series?
I've only watched one episode so far.
Oh my gosh, and it's already had that impact. Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, just because I was traveling and I was like, I already have like only a backpack with me, which like when I have to haul it on my back, actually feels like a lot of stuff. Like I made a rule to myself that I was like, if there's something you don't wear in this, you have to throw it out before you go home.
but yeah, now that I'm like back in Canada and going to get settled back in, I want to go through that, because I think that is so powerful. Like we hold on to this stuff that just takes up space in our lives. And it feels like maybe it doesn't have a big impact, like especially if it's in a garage or a shed or a basement that you don't use all the time. But that is like, it's like that thing that's just there. And I think that is a part of like kind of, clearing that mental space to allow more stuff in. And I know the last time we talked, you were going through some big transitions. You were finishing up teaching school. You were potentially looking at other jobs. I know you're doing some stuff that's different now. Are you feeling kind of like less overwhelmed in your life now?
Yeah, like in terms of my work life, that's interesting. I can't say for sure yes, and I can't for sure say no.
Okay.
There's been, like you said, there's a transition period. So the new job I have itself is very much in alignment of, I guess, the work that I do through my business and through yoga and through just being. Like it very much is who I am and who I want to be and how I want to serve the world. So that's been really great and really energizing. I've doubled my commute though. So that has been a little bit tiring, and still kind of figuring that aspect out. We lost one of our dogs in the fall.
I'm sorry.
And
that's tough.
Yeah, so I felt really like guilty leaving our other dog home by himself so much. And luckily my work is awesome and they love him and I can bring him in whenever it makes sense for me to bring in. Like sometimes I'm too busy that I couldn't bring him into the office for the day, but they've been really supportive and like I can bring the dog into the office with me, which also helps my own emotional support and lessens my guilt that he's home alone all day by himself.
For sure.
So there's been a lot of things in life that have kind of, I wouldn't say like, it's just kind of, I've rebalanced things. What I have noticed is that, like I said, my work doesn't drain me. Like I don't feel like I have to have a nap when I get home from my job. And I do my best to use my commutes with positive, uplifting things like your podcast, and also give myself a break from any kind of noise. Like I've done quite a few commutes that are completely silenced, no radio, no podcast. And that really helps me like clear my head too, and listen to what it's actually going on and listen to sometimes just peace and quiet without feeling like I have to take more in. I think in the information age, and also kind of like chronic self-developers, we kind of think that the answer is always outside of ourselves sometimes, and we must need to know more. And really, if we take, like yoga says, if we take more time to be quiet and listen to ourselves, the answers are actually within you. The things outside of you can help you reconnect with oh yeah, I know that. But they actually are all within you. You just forgot.
Yeah, totally. I love that. I sometimes just put in headphones and don't listen to anything. It's like I don't do that in my car. Obviously that's silly, but like there's something about like having headphones in that kind of gives people this like, I don't want to talk to you type vibe if you're like in a public space.
Yeah, 100%.
But if I'm feeling like I don't want any inputs, I'll just put the headphones in and not listen to anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. Like I think especially, it's really easy to be like, oh, this should be like my learning time, or this should be like my time to consume content. But, sometimes we do just need to like maybe digest that content or just give ourselves a break, like calm that chatter and kind of get clear on like what's going on inside of our heads. Cause it's so easy to just keep piling stuff on. Like we'll pile it on forever, which is kind of, wraps around to what we were talking about with that journaling. Like, I think that's probably part of like giving yourself the chance to just journal freely is like kind of a decluttering process for our minds.
Yeah, 100%. And there's been some really interesting yoga practices I've discovered along the way that I didn't even know existed until I started like delving into my training manuals. I was like, whoa, we never even did this one, So
like what type of stuff?
So I did a Kundalini practice for frustration.
Mm.
And wow, yeah, that was powerful. It's like 3 postures, like one's held for like 7 minutes, but it was like I could feel the releasing in my body. Like, so for me, when I'm releasing a like energetic or physical block, like my body will shake, whether that's my arms or my legs or, yeah, my body will shake. So I could like feel the shake, and then I cried, and then it incorporated laughter at the end. And it was like really cool. So,
Yeah, that sounds powerful. Can you find that just on the internet? Like, is it something I could Google or?
I'll try and find it on the internet, or I will take a screenshot of the page.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I'd love to check that out. Because I think it was you and I that were talking about, what is that practice? I think it was you. It's like where you hold these poses for a while and they're kind of strange. It's like a 1980s video or something like that. And then your body will start to shake.
Oh, yeah. So the trauma release.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're like the only other person I've met who's like actually heard of it. I was like, I've done that 80s video before.
Yeah, 100%. I haven't done the video, but there's a very, there's an amazing yoga teacher that was teaching out actually here in Cochrane. And she had studied, I think in Bali with, basically one of the modules or something was the trauma release yoga, which again, not very common. And kind of, I think last year and the year before, I had been in a car accident. And so investigating trauma, both from like a neurological perspective and then working through it meditatively and through yoga, was really in the forefront of my experience. So I did a lot of workshops and a lot of learning and lots of books around it. And that practice is specifically about releasing trauma, mostly from the psoas. So, and where they say you do tend to accumulate a lot more emotional trauma in the psoas. And what I find Kundalini yoga so profound on is that you can release it from anywhere. And like I'll shake in Kundalini yoga from many different postures. And it's just because your body is literally shaking out whatever blockage that you have. And I think for me, that's been really profound. And even things like just freeform dancing. I mean, you can shake out things freeform dancing. And so for me, that's really part of what I practice, what I embody, and what has proven to be useful for me, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I love all of that. I think all those practices are really powerful. And I think it's like, as like yoga teachers, it's like, we know that movement is really powerful, but there's something about like, just moving kind of intuitively with our bodies or trying things that are like a little bit different that can be really, really powerful. But I'm definitely.
Yeah, because I guess what I see in more of the Hatha and Vinyasa classes is that you kind of do the same things over and over and over again.
That is true.
And I think it was actually on the Yoga Girl podcast too. She had some sort of movement specialist she was working on for her back.
Yeah. I listened to that episode. So cool.
And when you don't use your body in certain ways, it is going to feel awkward because you're not used to moving that way. I think about even people who are starting to ride horses or whatever, like there's a lot of things that you don't even realize you're doing and muscles you've never used before. And so it's going to feel awkward, but there's a lot of therapeutic benefit to doing movements that you don't daily repetitively do, because there are all these little areas of your body that you forget about. Right. And that they do still hold tension, and they can still hold blockages. And you start to create awareness of like, oh man, I didn't even feel that piece of my body before. And, oh, it's tighter. Oh, now it's looser, and I've had so many people comment on that in Kundalini yoga too. Like a woman who had scoliosis said, after we did these two things, my neck hasn't felt this good. Like my neck and upper back haven't felt this good. And I don't remember when.
Yeah.
But those aren't practices that we do in kind of more mainstream yoga. We don't move that way.
Totally. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I was thinking about Kundalini, like as you were saying that. I think I told you the story before, but just like going to my first Kundalini class, I remember like it was just me and my boyfriend on a yoga retreat, and we were like on our backs, like just shaking our arms and legs in the air, like doing kind of like a dead bug pose. And I remember like kind of like opening one eye and side glancing. And I was just to make sure he was doing it. Like I was like, I'm not caught in some like weird joke, right? Like everyone's just laughing at me. No, and he was doing it and everyone else was doing it. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to roll with it. But Kundalini is definitely that one where you do like a lot of weird stuff, but you like leave feeling amazing. And you're like, I don't really understand it, but I'm just going to trust the process.
Yeah. And I think that takes it kind of in terms of a spiritual perspective, it creates that trust and like, well, I don't know all the mechanics and the anatomy and the why feels good, but I'm just going to do the uncomfortable. And it also kind of pushes our comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And I use a lot of humor. Because I'm like, yep, this is going to be weird. And yeah, you're going to look kind of silly. And, you can laugh if you want. Like, it doesn't matter. Just do it.
Yeah, for sure.
And even chanting in Kundalini yoga, I'll get people like deer in the headlights, like, oh my gosh, we're singing in this class.
That's how I felt the first time. They're like, now we're going to sing for 15 minutes. I was like, I don't sing in public. That's like something for me in my shower only.
Yeah.
That feels so good.
I'll bring in like a lot of jokes and stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if you know her or not. There's a woman named Sarah Harvey she's Canmore based, but she just started teaching Kundalini. She did her Kundalini training in the last year and has been doing classes at the Yoga Lounge. And she's like really good about that too. Like her like kind of typical joke in class is like, this is your first class. Like you're never going to forget this.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen her actually. I've seen the Yoga Lounge post about her classes because I follow them.
Yeah.
But I haven't met her in person yet. So.
Yeah, she's really awesome. I think you'd like her. She does like a lot of outdoor stuff as well.
Cool.
Like does not stuff with like horses, but she does more like river guiding trips and stuff that's incorporated with nature and hiking and that sort of thing. And then she also does craniosacral release.
Oh, love that practice.
Yeah, yoga nidra, sound bowls. Yeah, she does lots of awesome stuff. I think you definitely love her. She's pretty awesome. I want to be mindful of your time. So I'm curious, I guess just to kind of wrap up our call, like what is something that you can, to get towards your goals? Like we've talked about a little bit about marketing and we've talked a little bit about like things that are holding you back. And it sounds like you're making like a lot of progress and kind of looking at like, okay, these are my blockages. These are the things that are challenging. This is where I want to be. What's like one kind of thing you can do in the next week to get you from like to work through like a blockage to get you towards your goals for the spring?
I don't know if it's any so much adding something new. I think it's being consistent with what I'm already doing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like I said, my journaling in the morning has been really helpful into becoming aware of those limiting beliefs and thought patterns, and then consciously working through them and making decisions to make changes. Keeping up with my my email newsletter and my Facebook. I actually did join Instagram, but I really have no idea how to use it yet. So
is it something you want to do, or is it something that you're like, I feel like I should do this?
Honestly, I feel like it was something that everyone said, well, you should really be on Instagram. That's where people are. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of beneficial for me because I actually have no idea how to scroll. So it really doesn't take any amount of my time because I literally go on there, fumble around how to post, which takes much longer than it probably does for most people. Mm-hmm. And then I'm off of it. I don't have a habit of checking it. So in a way, it's somewhat better than my Facebook because Facebook, I tend to notice myself zapping time, scrolling through things.
Yeah.
Whereas Instagram, I'm so illiterate with it that I don't even know how. So it was kind of out of obligation and suggestion from other entrepreneurs, but yeah, I don't feel pressured to do it, I guess, but I'm trying to stretch myself because I also know if we don't grow, then, if I thought posters were the only way to do marketing, I wasn't open to anything else, then I probably wouldn't notice much growth. So
yeah,
I think it's I think it's for me, and like, again, I'm very open because you've done a lot of work in this area, but I think it's being consistent with what I'm doing
Mhm.
and maybe creating some of the back end stuff. So I plan to do that next weekend.
Like starting those visualizations, getting
Yeah,
what those programs offer. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, with Instagram, I think you've definitely got like a good perspective on it. Like I don't think you came from a place of like I should do this and have any resentment, which is really good. Something if you're not like scrolling that might be helpful is there's a couple programs that like let you schedule content. So there's like Hootsuite or Buffer. I use Hootsuite,
Okay.
but I know some people who really like Buffer over Hootsuite. But basically, and you can actually do this with your Facebook page too. But you can schedule your content. But it might be helpful for Instagram. Like if you're just going on there and creating the content, you could just do it and then schedule it out like a week or two in advance. That's something that I do. One, because it saves me time, but also two, because I do have a scrolling habit on both Instagram and Facebook. It's like doing social media can be so time consuming. So I like to schedule a lot of the posts for MBO like a week out.
Yeah.
And that way I can just go like check them. I can answer comments. I can check my inbox and that sort of thing, but I don't get as like stuck on it as if I was on there every single day. But yeah, you can add like your little caption. You can add hashtags if you want. You can just upload your photo and then you schedule it for when you want. And it'll just go through. If there's any like troubles with it, it'll send you an email. So you'll always know if it doesn't go for like any reason. But yeah, I found that to be like a game changer in my own business just for time saving.
So Hootsuite and Buffer?
Yeah. So Hootsuite is HOOT and then Suite. So SUITE. And then yeah, Buffer.
Oh, I see. I'm glad you spelt it. I put like sweet as in candy sweet.
Oh, I wonder if that would have showed up if you Googled it that way.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Okay.
But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that might be something that's like helpful for you to actually keep you more off the app. And then you can just like check it to see like if people are engaging. Like obviously you want to engage back with them. But yeah, that's like a software that I really like.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries. So if people want to check out like, you know, what you're up to, where can they go to find you online?
So my website is meghanvornholt.com. So it's www.meghan, Meghan, Vornholt, which is kind of a different last name, V as in Victor, ORNHOLT.com. Facebook, it's Meghan Vornholt Yoga and Equine Facilitated Wellness is my Facebook page. And yeah, so on the website, you can sign up for my newsletter or check out old things, learn about what equine facilitated wellness is, learn a little bit about what my background is. And yeah, I haven't quite gone. Videos are still something that scare me. So I'm not very, like, I don't have any videos or online content posted yet, but that's where we are right now.
Maybe something for like later in 2019 or 2020.
Yeah, that's a longer term, short term goal.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, despite like doing so much audio work, I actually don't do a ton of video stuff either. I don't actually hate myself. I don't really like hate watching myself on video or anything like that. It's just sometimes it's just like the hump of actually doing something that's new, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And it feels awkward because you're not really interacting with anybody. You're just like interacting with the screen. So yeah I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
That's like definitely how I feel about like lives. Like people are like, oh, you should do more lives. And I'm just like, I don't know. Like it feels so weird. It's like everybody's looking at me, but like I can't see them. And then they're typing. It just like feels like a weird thing. But yeah, we all have that stuff that we can work towards. So that's awesome. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
And I am in the Cochrane, Calgary area. So yeah. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah, Cochrane, Calgary. And all your classes and stuff are on your website, right?
Yep, they're on my website. I'm pretty close to Canmore too. So little mountain town. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Meghan. I'm glad we got to chat and to catch up. And it's just awesome seeing like how far you've come over the last couple of months.
Well, thanks for being a big part of it and for your perseverance and patience and trying to find a day that we could do this. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right. I hope that you guys enjoyed that episode of the podcast and hearing Meghan's story, re-listening to this, many months later, because we actually recorded this back in February of 2019. And as you guys know, it is now October. And, listening to this again, it was just so cool to hear all the growth that she had between the time that we were working together and the time that we caught up. And I can only imagine the growth that she's had in her business since that point. It's been really cool to see Meghan's business grow and flourish. Of course, I follow her on social media and I'm on her email newsletter, and she has continued so much of this consistency and just continued to narrow in on what excites her and what lights her up in her business. And I really feel like that's what we need to be working towards as yoga teachers. So as Meghan said on the call, it's so beneficial to work with somebody. So whether or not you feel like I'm the person to work with, go out, find a personal coach, a business coach, a life coach, a mastermind group, a group of women or men or like-minded people that can support your goals, and just really allow yourself to lean into the support of others. One of the best things that I've ever done for my business was hire a business coach, and now I have an accountability group that I rely on pretty heavily. So it is definitely amazing to have that support system. As always, you can find notes from this episode, resources that we talked about on the website at mbomyoga.com. You can find me on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And if you're interested in working together or chatting more or just asking a question, giving a comment, feedback, anything like that, you can reach out at info@mbomyoga.com. I always love to hear from you guys. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on Monday. Namaste.